Shabbat Shalom to all of you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to all of you.
Shabbat Shalom.
I am so glad that I am here with you, and it's always a joy for me to be able to speak not only about God's revelation in the Torah, but also because I am a Meshachim Yehudim. I am a Messianic Jew. I am a Jew that takes very serious the principle or the 13 principles in Judaism, especially the one that say, that I believe with perfect faith, that even in the coming of Messiah, and even in his delay, I will be rejoicing and waiting for him. Well, I am those ones who believe that the Messiah has two prongs. One is the Messiah ben Joseph, the Messiah, the suffering Messiah, and the other prong is Messiah ben David. And the Messiah ben Joseph, in my understanding, has been already fulfilled. And now the one that is going to come, and the one that all of us we are waiting, Jews and Gentiles and all the nations of the world, all the universe, that we're waiting for the fulfillment of Messiah ben David. Now, here of course there are differences, here of course there are disputes. Remember, I have always said, when there are two Jews, three opinions. And now if you added the Gentile opinion, is one more opinion. You see, and we can debate, we can fight about it, I am right and you're wrong. At the end, the only way that we know that we are right is that the only way that we know that we are right is when the Messiah comes back and all the revelation is going to be given to us. Sometimes somebody asks me this question, and this question is very simple, okay? The question that was asked was this. Which Messiah do you think is going to come? No? Is Jesus, is the same Jesus who is coming back? Or is going to be another Messiah? And then I say, Messiah ben Joseph is going to be transformed in Messiah ben David. Okay. But that's Jesus. The people are. And I say it again. Messiah ben Joseph is going to come as Messiah ben David. Is that Jesus? Okay, let me say it in this simple. Yes, for your own good. But again, I need to go back to this. Messiah ben Joseph is going to come back as Messiah ben David. It's Jesus. I say, already I told you. But what is the problem? You see, for many people, they have enthroned, idealized, almost a name, and is a person we can put it, and we have made it a God. And doing that, we have forced ourselves to be held by time. One of the things, one of the first commandments, the commandments of God about, I brought you out of Egypt, and one of the first thing that He's going to tell us, do not make any likeness or image of me. Why? Our blessed God, blessed be His memory, He wanted to specifically ask us not to do certain things like that. Because we as humans, we have this problem. We make images, we make statues, or we make figures, or we make ideas, and they become our gods. In this parasha, you're going to see something very interesting. Besides the Chukkat, the Adumah Para, the red heifer, or the red cow, this is Chukkat. Then we are going to have the death of Miriam. Then we are going to have the death of Aaron. And then in between these two deaths, we are going to have problems with the people of Israel, always being rebellious, complaining. We are big babies, we are great complainers. We are going to have the Nahash, the Hoshe Nahash, the cooper snake, or the Nahash Saraf, what it means the burning snakes, or poisonous snake that is sometimes translated. And then Moshe Rabbeinu is going to put in a post, and he said that all that will see that snake, they will be healed from the death of the poisonous snakes. It's interesting, in Havesorah Yohanan, in the book of the Gospels, or the Good News of John or Yohanan, in this magistral encounter between no less and no less than Nicodemus, you know him as Nicodemus, the teacher, Nicodemus, a great Pharisee, who goes at night in a very secret encounter with our Rabbi Yeshua. And he goes and has this interlocution, interchange. And at the end, Yeshua is going to tell him that in the same way, that has happened with this snake, the Son of Man is going to be lifted up. And whoever has faith in him shall be okay. Now, I did a study long time ago, and I want to bring it back from time to time, about those powerful passages in the book of Yohanan, and to tell you how the mistranslations, how the commas and punctuations can change the whole understanding of what Yeshua is talking. Who is talking about whom, and who is him. Now, I arrived to the conclusion through the Hebrew and to the right ways to understand that he was talking about God, not about himself. But in Christianity, they has confused God with the Messiah. They have made it one. And making one, doing the things, they have constructed, theologically speaking, a God who is man and who is divine. This idea, of course, for us Jewish people, is an aberration. Why? Because for us, it's almost impossible to think that God is a man. Now, there are many parts in the Torah and the Tanakh who basically God said that he is not a man. And I have told you that we need to look about revelation from the Torah down, not from down to up. And of course, that when you have grow up with certain type of understanding, dogmas or doctrines, then it's very difficult when somebody speaks to you a totally different way that you have always believed. Now, let me tell you, I've been born as a Jewish person, and when I had my first encounter with the Messiah Yeshua, I paid the price, okay? Because in my community, Jews don't believe in Jesus. Now, from the other side, what about if I bring a Gentile Christian and convert to Judaism? That what the families are going to act. We Christians don't believe like Jews, And this is the problem about religion. And I already told you, conversion is totally a man's invention. Even the word conversion doesn't exist in the Torah, in the scripture. What in the scripture exists, the word is teshuvah, to return, to come back to God. But it doesn't mean conversion. Conversion, I explained to you, is a lateral movement. You go from religion A to religion B. And the only thing that you have done is go in a lateral movement, in the same level. What it means teshuvah, to return to God, to go back to God, is an upward movement. It's a circular movement that you go down, up. You're going to have a relationship with God. And God is going to speak to you, and you want to speak to God. You know? And this is one of the reasons that sometimes it's confusing. And here in Chukkat, I told you that is a very, very controversial teaching, because Jews and Gentiles, they have their own understanding. Both of them talks about that it's messianic, but a totally different way to understand it. All depends how do you understand who the Mashiach is. The controversy even increased when you added your own fantasies or your own wishful thinking or your own misunderstanding. I'm sorry to say misunderstanding, because many times we have put in the scriptures our own ideas, Jews and Gentiles. Okay? And here I am not trying to defend one or the other. I am trying to clarify the difference between religious and revelation. Religion to me is everything that man tries by all means and ways to satisfy a superior being or to congratiate with superior being. Meanwhile, to have a relationship with God, to have a spiritual relationship with God, it is that God reveals to you His presence, and you acknowledge that presence, and you develop that presence with Him and with others who are alike. Now, here is an important point. We have a tendency to confuse terms because sometimes we put it all together, or because sometimes the translations are done in such a way because the translator or the interpreter has already their own bias. And having their own bias, they're going to impose their own understanding. And if you do not know the language, you know, you are going to believe what they say, and then you fall in a trap. And then you say, but here the Bible says this. And then you say, which Bible? You know, which translation? When you read the GPS edition, the Jewish translation, and you compare it with the Christian translation, there are a lot of differences. And the same words are put in different ways. And you ask, why? Because each one of them has their own purpose, their own idea, their own agenda. Then we need to be careful about those things, and we need to be fair on the scripture. For example, I want to give you a very clear attempt to change the Word of God in Judaism more than in Christianity. Christianity has been more loose in that area, but Judaism is very strict. The Masoretics and they are so strict, the Soferim, the scribe, that they don't try at all to modify any word, because for them it's the greatest sin that can happen. But in Zechariah, in chapter 12, when they say about that you are going to see the only begotten or the only one, where specifically every rabbi says it's talking about Mashiach. That's very interesting. Okay? Then the part that say, and he is going to, we want to see the one that has been trespassed. The word trespass is Aru. Aleph, Resh, Bab. And what the Masoret has done, it has erased only half of the Bab. You know the Bab is a long line, for those who don't know Hebrew. And they cut it and they put it, the short Bab, I'm going to call it, in order to, it is called Yud. Okay? Then instead to say Aru, para mí trespass, they change it to Ari. That means my cup, my lion cup, or something like that. Only a little change. Oops! And why? Because if they read the one that has trespass, it's too obvious. And then you're going to say, what happened here? Last week I said to you, one of the greatest mistakes, I will call it that way, for Israel is that still today they are denying Yeshua as Messiah ben Joseph. I am specific here, Messiah ben Joseph. For many of us, it's more important Yeshua than sometimes than God himself. And we need to keep ourselves in line. Because Yeshua is Elohim, he is an envoy. He is a malach. He is like an angel. He is the Messiah. He's a prophet. He has all those titles. But he is an envoy. He has been sent by God. He himself said that. But then what is the problem here? The confusion. The confusion between the sacrifice of the korban, the offering, the in-between, the go-between, what we call it the mediator, with God himself. And this has been the greatest problem in Christianity. And confusing that two ideas between God and the mediator and making them one has created a totally new religion. It's not that Judaism, rabbinical Judaism is innocent, or they didn't know what they were doing, or they doing anything perfect. Rabbinical Judaism has committed a lot of mistakes with the Shevei Al-Peh, with the Oral Torah. They have included so many doctrines inside the scriptures that right now we are almost being kidnapped by the rabbis to really what do we believe. And it's so confused. Then we have these two great religions, and we can add even Islam too, as the third great religion. All they have the same source, but at the same time, each one of them, they're telling you that they are right and the others are wrong. You know? What is it in the Torah? God be true, man a liar. Okay? And we need to go back constantly to the original. We need to go back to the source, to the Torah. And this is little by little we are going to arrive. That means that everything that the rabbi says is wrong? No. Doesn't mean that everything that the Christian church says is wrong? No. Doesn't mean that everything that Islam says is wrong? No. Okay? They have a lot of truth embedded in their teachings. But the problem is when you talk about what really God has done and what he is and how he works. Then it is a constant struggle for many of us to arrive to the completely truth. And all of us, without exception, we have been contaminated. Say all of us. In case that some of you, they are more perfect than others, will say that I am not contaminated. You must be contaminated, but I am clean. You know? Now, let's look at the parasha Chukkat in that sense. First of all, he starts with saying, "Vayadaber Adonai el Moshe, Aharon lemor, Sot Chukkat, HaTorah, Asher Siva Adonai lemor, Daber el Bnei Israel, Vayichu elecha, Para Adma, Temima, Asher Ein Ba Mum, Asher Lo Ala Aleja Or." And God called Moses and Aaron to say to them that they need to fulfill this hok, this, I would say, this ordinance from God. You know, the word hok is a very interesting word. As I mentioned to you before, the Torah is basically divided in three parts according to the teaching. The word Torah, by the way, the word Torah doesn't mean law, and the translation of nomos is a mistranslation. Okay? When they say, oh, the law, and they compare it with the Torah, that's a mistranslation. The Torah, but it means precepts, teachings, guidance, has three parts. The mitzvot, They are called the commandments. The second portion is called the Chukim, the ordinances. And the third portion is called the Mishpatim, the part that we call it the legal setting. That is the typical law, the legal setting law. Okay? Now, when you go through that portion, and you are going to see this portion, you're going to see that the hawk is the portion that say that it is an ordinance of God who doesn't have any clear explanation, but we need to follow by obedience. That's all. Many of the rabbis say that God sometimes has given us certain ordinances that He is not asking us our opinion, only He says, be obedient. You know, it's very, and to put it in a very simple way, as an explanation comparison, you know, when you have a child, 3 or 4 years old, or 6 or 7 years old, and you as a parent, and you are saying, they're saying, why we do this? And you as a parent say, because I say so, you know? And that doesn't look like too good, too nice, but sometimes the children, they need to learn that it's not why I tell you to do that. What they need to learn is to obey. This is the deal. Okay? And God has certain cooking, certain ordinances for us to help us to be completely in obedience with Him. And this cooking, you know, I mentioned to you before, in the 10 words of the 10 commandments, the 3 first commandments are mitzvot. The 4th and 5th, that mean the Shabbat and the honor fathers and mothers, is chukim, you know, ordinances. And then from the 6th to the end are all mishpatim, legal part, between men and men. The first one is vote between God and men, and the second part is between God telling us, obeying God, and honoring God through our parents. This is the way that is described. Well, this red heifer, the parah man, even in that, the rabbis, the sages are arguing about what it means without a defect. And some rabbis talks about defect is talking about anything physical. But you see, they are the super religious people. You know, I don't know, but in kosher food, there are different levels of kosher food, you know? And believe me, not all kosher foods are kosher food according to the kosher who produce the kosher food. Okay? And there is glad, super glad, and extra glad. And then from the other you have the K, and you have the COR, and this is all different one. Different provider. Exactly. Okay. Well, the same way. Here depending who is talking, the super or the more lenient. One say what it means a cow, a red cow without defect means that doesn't have any physical defect. The extra, they say that doesn't even to have more than three hairs that are not red, disqualify the red cow. Now, let me ask you this simple question. Who in the world is going to be looking for 3 hairs in a cow? Okay. It sounds sometimes terrible, but it's the truth. By the way, there is a story in the Talmud about the different red cows. I mentioned this before, and I'm going to read it to you in order that, according to the Talmud, they say that the red cow, the first red cow was taken by Eliezer, the son of Aaron, that was burned by the son of Aaron. The second cow was burned by Ezra, the scribe, you know. The third cow, The third and fourth cow was burned by Shimon Hasadik, and then the two next one was by the high priest Yohanan. The seventh was burned by the prophet Elijah. Okay, I didn't know that he burned the, but that is the tradition. And then the eighth was burned by Hamel the Egyptian. The ninth was by Yishmael ben Piavi. And finally, and this is here what I call it a messianic connotation. The 10th one will be burned by the anointed king of Messiah, who will be purifying all of the Jewish people that will have come defiled by their transgressions. It's interesting. The same terms that you're going to see if you read the book of Hebrews. Okay? The language is very similar. But we need to understand what we are talking about. And this is what I keep trying to bring you all together to understand what the scriptures say, what men say, and what we need to look at this. The basic principle I told you is the one that can forgive things is God himself. God can give authority to others, but God is the only one that can forgive sins. Okay? This is very important to understand. The mediators are used as a figure and a picture, but God is the one that acts in all of this. For example, there is a great discussion about the Nahash, the serpent that is put in the top, the serpent, you know. And the question of the rabbi asked this question: who was the one that was healing? Was the serpent or God? And then Rabbi Akiva very interestingly said to his disciples, you know, you start believing tales. That is a tale. The one that was healing was not the serpent. The one that was healing was God himself. Okay. Well, we need to go back always to the scriptures and to understand who is the healer and who is the one that gives you a new understanding. Now, when all of this was instituted, this is another controversy among the rabbis. When was instituted? If you look at the parasha right now, this is between the beginning of the 38 years, the end of the journey of Israel and getting ready to get or to conquer the promised land. Then why the Chukkat is put there? Or why this is a jump of 38 years? Well, many times I have told you that the Torah not necessarily is written chronologically, but is written in the sense of following topics, of following ideas, or continuity of the teaching. That not necessarily means that is that time. Only this, we can prove this in many ways, that is no chronological or anything in many ways. The rabbis, great rabbis, are constantly fighting, you know, about it is here or it is there. Instead to mention which rabbis, because you already have heard me how many times I mentioned those rabbis that fight all the time, I'm going to tell you one thing. One rabbi said that it was written before even Har Sinai was given the tablets. Others say that was written in the second year of the just inauguration of the temple, because before to getting in the temple, they needed to be sure that if you were going to participate in the temple, you needed to be clean. Others say that was done after the teaching, and here in the book of the Mikvar or Numbers, also we have in chapter 9, do you remember, the Sheni Pesach, the second Passover, and the reason why they couldn't attend to the regular Pesach, because they were the ones that were carrying on, the men that were carrying on the bones of the body of Joseph to take it. And they needed at least 7 days for purification. They were going to miss the Pesach. Then they needed to have the second one. Well, telling you that this instruction was already there. And there are words that are used in a way that is very important to understand. And one of these words that I use, instead, because I have spoken this before, I don't want to repeat myself. Only I want to bring to you certain important points. The first one here is about the Mei Nida, the water or Nida. Okay? The word Nida, where Nida means separation, is used constantly for the time of the women are in her period and they need to go through this cleanse. And they have taken a very ugly connotation or almost anti-feminine connotation, making the woman dirty or making the woman the cause of the cause of tamei, you know, the cause of being unclean. But this is a teaching that God is giving to us totally the contrary, to protect and to elevate the woman to the right level. What happened is that we have done the opposite. Today, for example, in many circles, very religious circles, you know, women and men, they don't even touch each other, they don't even look at each other, and everything is prohibited, you know, and they look at the woman as the source of contamination. Now, you need to understand that this separation of the woman was only to go to the temple to touch the sacred things, like the things that were in the temple. That is not any longer, we don't have temple. And many people ask me, can a woman come to synagogue during that time of her life? And the answer is, oh, of course. What's wrong with it? And the woman can't make unclean anybody. The woman cannot make unclean anybody. This is totally separate. Then, was part of the extension that following the Mishkan, that the women and men were separated. Then when they came to the synagogue, they separated men and women. You know, the women were around outside. Why? Because they could touch the sacred, the thing like the Torah, things like that. Totally that is a halachical. That means as is rabbinical. It is not biblical. Okay? Now, it is time that we bring back woman to the right place. And this is one of the things that Messiah Yeshua did. And this is the reason why it's so important to understand the process about the scriptures, about what Messiah Yeshua was going to do, was going to bring us back to Torah, to the real Torah. Not to the Torah that man has fabricated, but to the Torah that God has revealed to us. And we need to understand in that way. Then, here, what is the point I want to make is this mainly that this water of separation is for purifying. The idea it is that I will be purified because I have been in contact with a corpse. I have been in contact with a dead body. I have been in contact with a human bones. That was the idea. Why and when they had to function? When I was going to go to the Mishkan or to the Bei Mishkan, to the temple. Okay. Now we don't have temple. We don't need to worry about that. The other thing is, today, and at the moment I am talking to you, in Israel, there is a group, the Emunah B'Mikdash. This is a group of followers of very Orthodox people who has already the cornerstone for the rebuilding of the temple, and they already say that they have the ashes of the red heifer. Now the problem is that they contradict themselves. From one side they say that when Mashiach comes, they're going to have the red heifer, and now they have the red heifer before the Mishkan. Yes. Right now they say that they have it from Switzerland. Okay. But to me that it's only, you keep informed about who has it, who doesn't have it. But the point here is the contradictions among themselves. Before they say, if Messiah, we need to do it. And then after they change, they say, no, we need to do it in order that Messiah comes. That sounds very similar to Christianity. When Christianity say, all the Jewish people need to go back to Israel in order that Messiah comes. And then Christians, in a good sense and in good tone, they are throwing us, all the Jews, back to Israel. Why? Because they want to bring Messiah sooner. I say, don't push me. God will take me. If He wants. But this is when your theological, your doctrines influence you instead that you look at the scriptures. Then, only to tell you, and get out this because I need to go to another subject, is this, that this Chukkat, this ordinance, is going to become clear, I believe, when Mashiach comes back. And He's going to tell us the truth. That's my personal faith. Today, I am limiting how much I can tell you. Okay? And I don't want to reinvent the scripture here and telling you something that I don't even know. The next thing is about the death of Miriam. It's our folklore. Our Jewish folklore is full of Miriam and the teaching of Miriam. Miriam was a prophetess. My dear friend and Rabbi Yosef Shemi gave us a wonderful teaching about the Miriam and the rock and the water and the Spirit of God. And he went to the soul of this teaching. Very beautiful. But instead to go too much to the soul, I'm going to give you a simple thing that the Rabbi teaches that Miriam was the rock. Menjual was the rock that produced water, and all these 40 years in the desert was Miriam who was brought the water. The same way that when Aaron died, the clouds and the fire stopped, and the manna stopped, and then the children of Israel, they couldn't any longer depend totally on God. They needed to depend on themselves, and that started the fights and the rebellions and all those things. But what we can see in all this teaching is that the jump from 38 years, suddenly they are going to conquer the land. In order to conquer the land, everybody who left from Egypt, they need to die. Who were the last three who died before they were going to fulfill that? They needed to die. Miriam, need to die Aaron, and they needed to make Moshe. It's interesting. They say that Miriam died, they did more too much for her, and that's the reason they were punished. And God sent the serpents, because they were complaining. And the serpents start biting them. That's how God said to Moshe, you're going to build this serpent, and you're going to, all those who see the serpent, they are going to be healed. Now, Messiah Yeshua say exactly the same thing. About the Son of Man. If you have your Meshakim Yehudim Ketuvim, the Messianic writing, in Yohanan chapter 3, it's very interesting because if you can understand what I say here, I think that you will understand even better what I'm going to tell you. Nickdamon said, how can anyone is already old and be born again? I try to tell you that you need to be born again. I want to go about the born again if possible. No one can enter in the kingdom of God. Okay? Now, the term kingdom of God, already in order that euphemistic terms need to be understood, is a euphemism for God. Okay? Mahuto ha-Elohim means God Himself. And they use this term in order to avoid to pronounce the full name of water and the spirit. What is born in human nature is human, and what is born in the spirit is spirit. Do not be surprised when I say you must be born from above. The wind blows, and what it pleases, you can hear the sound. But you cannot tell where it comes, you cannot tell where it's going. Then, I tell you the truth. We speak what we know, and witness only what we have seen. And yet, your people reject our evidence, and you do not believe me when I speak to you about earthly things. How will you believe me when I speak to you about heavenly things? You know, no one has gone up to heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the Son of Man. Okay? As Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So everyone who believes will have eternal life in him. Okay? You need to understand that you need to go to the Greek to see what I'm really thinking. But I'm going to give, because this is the problem when you don't go directly to the Hebrew, to the Greek and then to the Hebrew. When Yeshua said, you know, here, no one can see the kingdom of God without me. 14. What is the part? Yes. 16, no?
Yeah.
3:16. How many of you have read this verse 3:16? For God so loved the world that he had given his only begotten Son. Whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but has everlasting life. No? We repeat it over and over again. Now, we need to look at the Greek and look the nuances, where they come. First of all, when you receive the manuscripts, the original manuscripts, there were no punctuation, there were no commas, there were no capital letters or small letters. All was written, and all one through the other. You needed to separate the words. The commas and punctuations are not sacred. Only to add that, okay? Now, I say, who is talking to whom in this dialogue? Yeshua is speaking to Nicodemus. Okay? Now, Yeshua, the question here is, Yeshua is speaking to Nicodemus, and Nicodemus is asking a very simple way. Yeshua was so humble that he didn't want to use his own name and say, I am the one, or I will be this one, or, you know, I want to talk about me in third person. Well, the language, the Greek, the grammar of this doesn't hold that. Okay? He is talking about God. Yeshua is talking about God to Nicodemus. And he's talking about his role as Messiah. But the faith and the salvation or the renovation or the total relationship with God comes from God himself. Then we say, whoever believes in him, third person, singular, you are. Most of the people say, believe in Jesus. That's what people say. But I don't know what Yeshua is saying. But Yeshua, to all that believe in him. Who is him? Now, but what is the problem? If you in Christianity, you have made him and Yeshua the same, you don't have any problem. But what does Scripture say? This is what I constantly ask in the congregation. When my friend, Uriel Ben Mordechai, has translated the book of Hebrews, in a very interesting translation about the terms, chapter 8 and 9 of the book of Hebrews, when they talk about the brit, the alliance, the covenant with God, and the new covenant, suddenly, in chapter 9, verses 15 and 16, the same word, who means brit, the covenant or relationship, and the word that means mediator, okay, is translated as testament and testator. And the question comes, why suddenly they change the words? And the answer is very simple. If you know a little bit about history of the translations of the scriptures, who introduced that term, New Testament or Testament, was no less and no more than Saint Jerome, when he translated the scriptures in Latin, and they call it the Vulgata. Vulgata because it was for everybody. Supposedly at that time everybody read Latin, you know, and they could understand Latin, and was given to the people. Now, the question is, why Saint Jerome has the great understanding that we are talking, instead that we're talking about the covenant with God, suddenly he jumped to Testament. Because already now, after the Nicaea Council, they already, the so-called Trinitarians, had already overcome the rest of the Christendom, you know, to the point that Constantine sent a decree that if you did not believe in the Holy Trinity and those kind of things, your neck was cut. All the Unitarians were persecuted and killed. You know, that was a very, very bloody time of the history of the Christian Church. And that they persecute anybody who didn't follow their understanding. And then, Saint Jerome needed to make it very clear, this idea. And to make it very clear, this idea, he needed to change the idea about covenant with testament. What is the difference between a covenant and a testament? The covenant needs to be between two parts. What is a testament? Somebody needs to die in order that when the person dies, you know, his will, his last will, can function, and then is shared with the people. For example, if you have somebody who dies, and then you are called that you are one of the inheritors, or that you are written in the will. Then you go in front of the lawyer, who is the notary, and he's going to read the last will of the person. The person is already dead, and say, I leave this to so and so and so, I leave this to so and so. In order that you can get it, the person needs to be dead. Because if you had a will of a live person, supposedly, you cannot inherit it yet. No? That's all. That was the idea. Why did he put the idea? Because in his understanding, in the understanding about the Trinitarian understanding, Jesus Christ died in the cross, and dying in the cross, he destroyed the Torah. Okay, and destroying the Torah, destroying the commandments of God, you know, there is no any longer valid. You don't need to follow any longer the Torah. This is the reason that they changed the Shabbat, they make it Sunday. And like that, they change a lot of things. You know, They invented the Lord's Supper. You know, it's interesting. You have Lord's Supper, that what is a Pesach, is Passover, and what it becomes. Lord's Supper at 10 a.m. in the morning. Then you start asking yourself, how can they call it Lord's Supper in the morning? But there's many of the things that I can tell you about how they change, but they cannot put everything together very much. But you read it in the way that it needed to be read. Instead to say, in order that, listen carefully, in order that this covenant will be fulfilled, needs to, and between the two persons, needs to die the mediator. But no interesting, Yeshua is the mediator. The Messiah is the mediator. Okay, if you go back and you read in Bereshit, Genesis, chapter 15, you know, the Brit Haben Betarim, you know, the covenant of the parts. That is the relationship that God makes a covenant with Abraham Avinu. And what happened? They kill the animal, they cut in pieces, and God goes over, and this covenant is fulfilled. Who was the mediator? The animal. And what mediate? Between God and Abraham. When you were in Har Sinai, why the covenant in Har Sinai was not totally complete? And I said, was not totally complete. And why in Jeremiah chapter 31 to 33 say, you know, and I'm going to make a new covenant with you, a new covenant. They call it new covenant, but really I'm going to renew the covenant with you. Not like we did with your parents, but at this time it's going to be in this way. Why? Because the covenant with the parents, there was not a mediator. If you read very carefully in Har Sinai, was not a mediator. Okay, then what is God going to say? Now I'm going to make a covenant with you in the right way. In order that always going to be a mediator, somebody who is going to be there to remind you that there is a covenant. And who did that? What was the role? Exactly the role of Mashiach, the Messiah. That's the role of Mashiach, the Messiah, to bring us back to Torah and to have somebody in between that can remind us. Now, it is interesting, the idea, I am throwing you too many things, but it's important that you start putting together all these ideas from this book. Also, the idea of the Hagadol Kohen, the high priest or the priest, what it means, the link between God and man. The Messiah is the link between God and man. Messiah, one of the functions of Messiah too, that he needed to be a priest. The priesthood of Yeshua, he couldn't be a priest through Aaron. Why? Because he was from the tribe of Yehudah. He was not from the tribe of Levi, and he was not from the family of Aaron. Then there needed to be another type of priesthood. And the other type of priesthood, what it was? Melchizedek. It's interesting that until 1947, many of the scholars, especially Jewish scholars, will doubt that the book of Hebrews was original, because this idea of Melchizedek was an invention of Christianity. Suddenly, they go to the Qumran and they found in the cave number 11, Q13, and parchment 13, they found what they call it today the Gospel of Melchizedek. That's how the Christian that they name the letter of Melchizedek. And finally they realized that all these ideas about the priesthood of Melchizedek was already in the Qumran, the sins they already had. Why? Because the sin has already broken with the Beit Mikdash, or with the temple of Jerusalem, because it was corrupted. The priests, the Sadducees, were corrupted, and they broke and they left. Interestingly enough, Do you know that Yohanan Hammakbir, the Yohanan the Immerser, or Juan el Bautista, John the Baptist, you know, was in a scene, but he was a Kohenim too, a Kohen. You know, if you read the story about him when he was born from Zachariah and Elizabeth, they were cousins of Yeshua and Miriam. No? Then, if you see all this progression, if you see that Yohanan is not any longer in the temple, but he's acting like a hermit or monk coming from Qumran, and he asked this, to his disciple, his Talmidim, to ask Yeshua if he really is the one that is going to come. Interestingly enough, in the Qumran, the father of righteousness, there is writings about the father of righteousness, in case that you're interested to read about the Qumran writings, you're going to find that they talk about the Mashiach that was killed. It's interesting, all stories that they are there. And all point to the process that Yeshua was going to do. They were very clear about who he was and what he was, his function that he was going to make. And in order to be a priest, he needed to renew the priesthood, but in something more solid and highly than the Aaronic priesthood, because the Aaronic priesthood was already totally kaput. And they created the Melchizedek. Jewish people created that, not Christian people. We need to give credit.
Sorry, even British. Melchizedek order, was that a higher order than the Levites? Because it was supposed to represent Jesus Christ as both priest and king. That's correct?
Very interesting question. Is the order of Melchizedek is a higher order of the Aaronic priesthood. Instead to call higher order, will be more interesting to say that is a prior order, okay? And never abolished. You're right, never abolished. Yeah, never abolished. The Aaronic priesthood was for a time and a moment. But for example, in the scripture with Pinchas, and we are going to see pretty soon, God gave to Pinchas the covenant, we call it the kuhana, the priesthood of peace forever, no? But being different, not superior. I don't want to call it superior, in the sense that in God is no superiority, it's roles. Okay? One is greater than the other, not because it's better, but it's because the role, position. And always we need to understand it. For God, all of us, we are equals. Okay? A priest and a regular Jew are equals. But the only difference is that the priest has a role that is different to the regular Jew. They are not better, but they fulfill different roles. In this case, what is mentioned here with Melchizedek, the other Melchizedek, a very good question that you have made, is that it's touching two sides, you know, and basically putting back together Moses and Aaron. Okay? Moses was the political leader, was considered the king of Israel, even though he never had the term. And Aaron was the Gadol HaKohen, that was the high priest. And in Melchizedek, both positions or both roles were put together again. Okay? That is a very good question. Thank you. Anyway, saying to you this is because what is so important here is that we have a tendency to make doctrines based on certain understandings instead to allow the scripture to speak for themselves. And There is no a doctrine that man made in order to make God better. Okay? And this is how the problem with religion. Every religion produces doctrines, teachings, in order to teach you that my way of thinking is better than your way of thinking, and if you don't believe in my way, God is going to punish you, throw you out. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is saved by knowledge. Salvation comes from God, not from men. Salvation doesn't come by merits. Salvation comes by God. Now, that means I don't need to do anything and cross my arm. Totally the contrary. When you are part of God, you are more dedicated to God than ever. And nobody needs to be a cheerleader for you to do something. You are excited about serving God. Why? Because God and you are one. That's what our Messiah Yeshua tells you. There are so many more things. We are going to study a little bit more this afternoon. But I hope that you get excited because the same way that the copper snake was lifted up, our Messiah Yeshua was lifted up, and we look at him, God will save us. What I mean with this is that if we follow and we understand what Yeshua did, this is the reason I said to you last week, and I will repeat it to you. Israel is getting in very ugly waters, tempestuous waters. Because if Israel keep denying Messiah Yeshua, things are going to be harder and harder for my Israel. And my only hope is that our Messiah comes soon. You know? In Aramaic, Rabbi Yeshua, you say Mar Anatah. Mar means Lord, come soon. You know? In Aramaic, that is the term they use, we call it in Christianity, they say Maranatha. You know? It is an Aramaic term to say, Lord, come soon. And we need to say, please, come soon. Come soon. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.